Today I'm reviewing an onboard footage from a good friend of mine, Miha. He was driving his 997.1 GT3 on Grobnik, which is a circuit in Croatia, and he managed to do a lap time of 1:42, which is quite good for his experience and the current conditions that were on the track at that time. So yeah, that was pretty good, but I think he can still shave a few seconds off his lap time in a safe manner, because I always say there are no winners on track days. You can only lose if you crash the car or crash into someone else's car. So the most important thing is to enjoy and to explore your and your car's limit in a safe way. So without further ado, let's take a look at this vintage style onboard footage from Miha. This is from an old V-Box system, but it's going to be good enough for today for us to review and hopefully help Miha gain a few seconds of his lap time. So here Miha is approaching the start-finish line, Grobnik, and straight away we see that, or I see that this line could be improved slightly, because ideally the first two corners on Grobnik are actually quite tricky and they caught most of the drivers off guard. You are going quite fast and you think you're not going to make it, but once you slow the car down, you see that you've actually overslowed the car, and that's where the major time improvements happen. So here on the start-finish line, ideally you should be all the way on the left-hand side of the track, all the way to the 200-meter sign. It's a bit blurry here because the video quality is not that good, but the 200-meter sign is here, and you should start the initial turning procedure at the 200-meter sign, not earlier, because if you do it earlier, you're going to mess up the first corner and then the second corner as well, because the car is not going to be positioned where you want it, and you're going to have to slow down a bit more than ideal, because the car is going to be jumping around and you're going to be, trying to keep the car on the right hand side of the track for the next corner, and it's not ideal. So let's take a look at how Miha did it. He's turning a bit too soon, going to the right hand side and then turning a bit more. So here the car position is quite good. You want to be positioned here on this curb in order to open up the second corner here. Miha did have to do a bit of dancing to get the car positioned here. If he would have turned at the 200-meter sign, the car would be much more stable and pointed in the right direction. So next corner, second one, the line is quite good. He drove over the green part of the track, which is always good if there are no tires on the apexes, obviously. And here we can see that Miha is doing 1:06. I think the GT3 is capable of doing like 1:20, so he was well below the car's limit. But it's important to, like I said, progress slowly and safely. And this corner is not ideal for testing the maximum corner speeds, so you got to take it easy. But if we go back a bit, for Miha, I would say, if he happens to be in this scenario again, at this point where the car is nice and stable and everything is under control and he slowed down quite good, he could have just lifted off of the brakes and coasted through this second corner. Sorry about that. So at this point on this curb, he could have lifted the brakes and coasted through the left-hand side or the second corner. That would mean that his minimum corner speed would be quite high, and he would have reached the outside of the track right around here probably, and actually drive over the curbs on the green concrete, which means that he has reached the limit of the corner. Obviously, he is still able to steer towards the center of the track here, so he's not at the limit. But again, the goal of the first corner is to really get the ideal line correct, and then carry as much speed as possible in the second corner. Ideally, drive on this green part of the track, and that means that you've done a really good job. Okay, let's go on. The next combination is tricky because you can actually see this is going to be your apex here, so it's quite a long corner, and Miha is a bit impatient here. He's turning in a bit too soon. Again, this is like the theme of Grobnik, especially for drivers with not that much experience. They usually take all the corners a bit too soon, and that means that the line is not ideal and the corner speeds are not as high as possible. And they usually, you can kind of self-diagnose if you're in the corner and you see the apex, or even drive over the apex and you still keep turning the steering wheel inside the corner. That means that you've turned in too soon, too early, and that there is space for improvements. So let's take a look at Miha's line here. He's turning too soon. At this point, if you are paying attention to this part of the video, you're going to be able to see that Miha is turning even after he's driving. He drives past the apex. Again, take a look at his steering. So this is the apex, and now you're going to see that Miha is turning the steering wheel even further. See? He moved the steering wheel even more to the right because he realized he's a bit too, like his line is going to take him off the track sooner than he wants. So again, take the third corner on the track a bit later. Try to hit this white curb, white painted triangle on the inside. Ideally, you would apex a bit before it. Let me rewind a bit. So ideally, you would apex right around here. I would say apex here, and then from here on, you should be opening up the steering wheel and applying the gas, and that should propel you to the outside of the corner. And again, because we have this nice little green part of the track, you can definitely drive over that. It's going to open your lines a bit and allow you to carry a bit more speed through the corners. So the next right-hander is super tricky, especially for people driving on Grobnik for the first time. It has a tiny bump in the middle of the corner, and ideally you should, the platform of the car should be super stable going into the corner. You shouldn't really be like lifting aggressively or applying the accelerator aggressively, so it's all like smooth sailing up until the bump, and after the bump you can go flat out and point to the inside of the corner. I'm going to show you how. Miha is doing quite a good job here, but again, he's turning a bit too soon. So as we can see, let's take a look at this again. He should have been, he's turning a bit too soon. He should have been should have stayed on the left hand side of the track a bit longer, ideally after the white triangle. That's the point where you turn in. Miha is already turning in, no worries. He is balancing the car quite nicely. Boom, that's the bump. And here, ideally, if you're going super fast and your car is loaded up nicely, you want to be aiming at this part of the track. So this should be your braking line. Miha is trying to push the car or move the car to the right a bit too much, and that can cause instability in the car, and you're like braking hard. You're going quite fast here, so you don't want to upset the car. So after the bump, you can go flat out for like a second or two and then brake in a straight line. So let's take a look at this corner again. Going in a bit too soon, controlling the car nicely, and then bump, you should go flat out, and after the bump, almost immediately start opening up the steering wheel. Miha is still trying to keep the car a bit more to the right, but ideally you should be braking up to here, up to the white line on the inside part of the track. The next corner we call Rieški corner. It's a super long left-hander, and I personally like to do kind of a V-shape corner. So I brake in a straight line, turn the car as quickly as possible, be patient with the accelerator, and then go flat out, pointing straight towards the exit of the corner. So Miha, he's trying to keep the car super close to the inside curb, which is not ideal because he could have carried a bit more speed and be at the center of the track or in the middle of the track. If he would have done that, he could have positioned the car a bit better for the exit of the corner and carry a bit more speed through. So here he's being patient with the throttle, but he is opening up. At this point, he started opening up the steering a bit, and he wanted to open the corner and get on the gas, but that results in him, like, if you see, he is already on the exit curb and he is still applying the steering angle. That's obviously not good. At this point, you should almost be like your steering should almost be straight, and you should be full on accelerating out of the corner. And because his line was not correct, he obviously can't do that. If he did that, he would be on the grass. So my suggestion here on this corner would be braking here in a straight line and then leaving the car or letting the car go towards the middle or towards the outside of the track, and then turning as much as possible and then going back in a straight line, in as straight as possible line. So here ideally you would be like in the middle of the track, and then you would be aiming at like the apex around here. So a bit before the white triangle is your apex point, and if you aim the car, if the car would be like turned towards the inside, I'm sorry for the horrible drawing, towards the inside of the corner a bit more, because he would have let the car go out a bit, he could have had a straight line here and then obviously have a much nicer exit, which would allow a higher speed, like I mentioned. Okay, let's move on. Okay, the next combination is super tricky. The first left-hand corner allows you to carry a lot of speed in, but most of the drivers, because you can't see where the track is going, they don't feel comfortable driving super fast in, which is okay. Like we mentioned, the number one priority is safety and fun, so don't push where you don't feel comfortable pushing. Miha is obviously a bit careful because of this car here. He doesn't want to go flat out, but his line here is pretty good. His minimum speed is 120. I think like 130 could be possible in this car. Obviously, if there would be a car here, he would feel a bit more comfortable. But the line through here is pretty good. Let's take a look. Brake, tap on brakes, keep the car left as much as possible, then brake in a straight line over the crest with gas. So the most important thing here is Miha's lines were pretty good. Here, I'm not sure if that was because of the car or because he knows he has to do it, but you need to stay to the left as long as possible, because then the next right-hander is straight. If you would start to unwind the steering wheel here, you would basically run out of track. So this is good. Gotta stay over on the left hand side of the track here, and then straighten up this corner as much as possible, and like, please remember, brake in a straight line here. So that's first important tip of this combination: brake here in a straight line. The next tip is, here is a bit of a crest. You can't really see on video, but it's kind of a crest. And the most important thing here is that you are like 10 or 20% on the gas at least, because if you brake here, if you get scared and you think, oh crap, I'm going too fast, your rear end of the car can overtake you and you end up in the barriers here. So try to avoid that. Brake a bit more if you're scared or not comfortable, but please, on this exit of the corner and going downhill, please try and stay on the gas, because if you're on the gas, the car's platform will be a bit more flat. Remember, the track is going downhill, so if you're on the gas, the car will tend to understeer sooner than oversteer, which is obviously easily controllable, or more easily controllable than the oversteer. That's it. He could have been a bit more aggressive on the gas here. As I mentioned before, if you're willing to drive the car over curbs, use the green parts of the track as much as possible. They're gonna allow you to carry loads more speed out of the corners. So Miha is a bit below the limit here. That's good. So this left-hander is, again, it's super fast, and in most cars you need a slight lift, but not a full lift. You can go with like 50% of gas throttle in this left-hand corner, and then it's important to brake in a straight line. So the car is going to be super loaded on the right side, and if you try and push the car even more to the left and then brake while the car is loaded up to the right, it's not going to end well. So try and it's not going to be the ideal perfect racing line, but it's important that once you're on the brakes on the next corner, before the next corner, the car is straight. So let's take a look at how Miha did. So he's like partial lift, boom, and braking. In this case, in this corner, I usually take a straighter line here. Miha tried to keep the car a bit more to the left, but that's super tricky because the car is going it's going quick, and if you don't time the lift and brake transitions perfectly, and you have a slight steering input in the car, it can end badly. So try and aim a bit more towards the middle of the track here when you're braking. It's not gonna hurt your next corner at all, but it will make the car a bit more stable. This next right-hander is superbly done. He drove over the green part of the track. This is perfect. In this next corner, there's a Lotus here, and I think Miha is being a bit careful here, which is correct. But we can see on the exit of this combination, Miha still has quite a bit of room here between the car and the exit curb, which means that he was not going as fast as the car would allow him. But that's good. Let's rewind and take a look at this line. So braking into straight line, hugging the inside as much as possible. And here Miha did drove a superb line, because here ideally you want to be as close to the right side of the track as possible, because then you have a straighter line into the left corner. If not, usually people, if they are too fast in the hairpin, they end up like here, and that means they have to compromise this left corner. So try and stay as much to the right as possible. Okay, so this next combination is probably the last tricky part of the track. You're going uphill, and you basically can't see where you're going. So you have to trust yourself. You gotta trust the car and trust that you know where on the track you are. Miha in this lap, he is trying to cling on to the right side or the right curb a bit too long, so he's like putting the steering on to the right, and then maybe he's not looking towards where he wants to go on the exit of the corner, and that's why he's a bit too late on the left corner. If we take a look, bam, he's a bit too late, and that's why, because he's a bit too late, the apex was a bit late, and that's why he's not using the full track width on the exit. So my advice here would be, this line is really good. He kept on the left side of the track as much as possible. He did a partial lift, which is good. So this combination, a lot of drivers on Grobnik will tell you that it's flat out. In most cars it might be, but it's not flat out in all the cars, especially like if you don't have new and like really good tires on and the conditions are not perfect. So don't try to go flat out on the first corner. And the way to tackle this combination is to lift before you turn into this corner. So like Miha did, we're gonna take a look at the full combination again. So lift, position the car, and then go flat out, and then try and not lift until you finish the whole combination, because if you're gonna lift in the middle of the corner, things will go south and you can spin because the car is loaded up, you're going super fast, and if you get scared and lift, it's not gonna end well. So if we listen to Miha's car, here he did a slight lift, positioned the car to the right, and then slowly went back on the gas, which is perfect. But at this point, right around this point where he drove over the inside curb, he should have already started to unwind his steering and point at the left corner. However, he was a bit too hesitant. He was trying to hug the right curb for a bit too long, and that's what hurt his lines. Again, not a huge major mistake. He was still flat out, didn't lift, but the lines could have been improved slightly. So, like I mentioned, when you drive over the right curb, as soon as you feel, okay, I'm over the right curb, you should start unwinding the steering wheel and point the car at the outside or the next corner, which is the left corner here. And I know it's tricky because you can't really see where you're going, but if we look at the combination again, you're gonna see that it's not that bad. So bam. Should have started unwinding, and he would end a bit around here, and then he would come closer to the outside of the track. Whoops. Okay, next up is the last left-hander of the track. We call it Zagrebački because it's close to Zagreb, and the breaking point here is, it depends on the car and the grip on the tires, but like the braking point, really, it can give you a lot of time, but it's scary to push the limit of the car on such a fast braking point. You're going like 200 plus kph, and you got to be careful not to crash because this corner doesn't have a nice gravel trap. It's quite short, and if you overshoot this corner, you can end up in the barriers rather quickly. So Miha chose his braking point. It was, in my opinion, it was a bit too soon because as we're gonna see, he actually went on the gas before the apex, which usually means I'm too slow. So let's take a look. We're taking Lotus. This is not actually a corner. You can go as close as to the left as possible. Chose his braking point, shifted down and into the left. At this point, he was, again, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, he was a bit impatient and turning into the corner a bit too soon. Here, you would ideally want to grip the track on the outside all the way. So grip on the outside all the way to the white triangle here. So let's take a look closer. So you should start turning into the corner around here, which is quite a bit later than Miha did. He's already like 1 meter off of the from the outside edge of the track, and that's why the line is not as ideal as it could have been. And Miha is like, he's too slow, and then he goes on the gas, and then he's like, at this point, if we're paying attention to his steering inputs, let me take, so he's turning in, first turn in, and then he turns it even more because he sees that the corner is actually tighter than it seems, and that's all because he was too quick in the corner. This was actually quite good because on this exit of the first left, you should be all the way on the exit curb, not maybe on the curb, but all the way to the curb. And then you have to be on the gas as soon as possible, but you shouldn't really turn before the white triangle or close to the white triangle, because then you have the last left of the track and then two right-handers, which aren't actually corners. They're just like you're going flat out, so not actually a corner. And then there's the long start-finish straight, and you can actually lose or gain a lot of time in this last corner. So let's take a look how Miha did. A bit too soon here, a bit too soon, but then he opens up to the right, and then a bit too soon on the last left again, and then he's flat out. So my suggestion would be try and be a bit later on the turn-in of the first left and a bit later on the turn-in of the second left. And then basically you're just playing with the car's grip and the platform, and you're basically, seeing where there's still some grip left. And the last left, the trick of this last left is to be on the gas, on like wide open throttle as soon as possible. Obviously, there's a bit of camber here. There's a lot of grip, more grip than you think. And even if the car does a bit of understeer, you can just understeer or oversteer. Sorry, you just have to stay on it, stay flat out. The track opens up a bit, so there's no problem going flat out here. And that should be basically the goal of this last corner, to be at this point to be as fast, as quick as possible. So you have the long, this one is easy flat in the dry, and this last right-hander is also easy flat across the finish line. So that's it. That's my review of Miha's lap. Hopefully this will help anyone else that will be driving on Grobnik anytime soon. And I'm just gonna reiterate what I said at the beginning. The point of track days is to have fun, to explore your limit and limits of your car in a safe way. And there's a lot of time to be gained in this lap, but it's important to progress in a slow and safe way. That's it. Take care and see you soon.